In this video, I want to share with you 4 one-minute habits that I give my players who are struggling to hit the ball straight, whether that be with their driver or their irons. Now, generally, within a few balls, they see significant changes to their ball flight. So let's get started and show you what those habits are, because they don't require loads of complicated swing changes, just a few small tweaks to sometimes just the setup and the way you're coming through the shot can make all the difference. Let's get started. So let's start with the irons first, and then what we'll do is we'll finish off with the driver. Now, before I get into the 4 habits, let's talk about what you're doing if you're slicing it or hooking it. It's really, really simple. I want you to imagine the golf swing as simply a swing door, like one of those old cowboy swing doors. If you are slicing the golf ball, okay, what we want to do is we want to get that club lined up at impact right there. But you, if you're slicing it, are catching the ball too late on the arc, so the door's actually open before you've actually hit the ball. You catch it too late on the arc. What this means is your club now is heading way to the left before you actually strike the ball. Combine that with an open club face, and now suddenly you create this kind of slice spin. If you hook the golf ball, you do the absolute opposite. What happens with yourself is this: we want to get the strike here, but you catch the ball too early on the arc before you've had a chance to square the club face up. That means that when you catch it early on in the arc, where's the face? It's aiming out to the right. So you're either going to hit a push to the right, or if you had a close face to that, you then suddenly start to create these big hook shots. So the very first habit that's going to help cure all of this for you, let's start with slices first, is a change in ball position. Have a look at this. So we said, look, if you slice the golf ball, well, you're catching the ball too late on the arc. The yellow line represents the swing doors, the middle of the swing doors, opening and closing, right? Now you're catching it too late on the arc. So what's the simplest thing you can do? By moving the ball further back in your stance here, this way, what are you doing? You're moving it back on this part of the arc. So when you're swinging, what does this mean? Well, it means that you're going to catch the ball earlier than you normally would. And if you catch the ball earlier in the arc, the ball is going to want to set off where this time? More out to the right. Now combine that with the correct face conditions, which I'm going to go into habit 2 in a second, and you're going to immediately start to create more of a draw style shape, okay? Or at least much, much straighter than you've done before. Okay, because when the ball position's over here somewhere, too far forward in your stance, now you're going to catch the ball too late on the arc. That's your slice. Okay, so let's have a look at this in action. And we'll do this. I'll actually introduce habit number 2 at the same time. So we're going to move the ball. This is a mid-iron. I've got 7-iron here. I'm going to move the ball back 3 balls. So from there, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to play it there, okay? So I'm going to move it back. Now, when I'm teaching people to get rid of their slices, I actually really exaggerate this. I might even move it back 4 or 5 just to start with. You could do the same. So we've got this center of the arc here, okay, opposite the lead heel. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the club down, and this is the habit number 2. When I put it down, I'm going to make sure that the butt end is opposite my inside lead thigh, and this is super important. I'm going to make sure the club face, for the purpose of this video, is lined up to my intended target. Yeah? Then I'm going to grip it. I am not going to do this. I'm not going to move my ball back in my stance like this, then grip it. Let me show you why. Look at this. Super important. This is habit number 2. If you hold the club like this and then just move the club around, if I move the club to here, move my ball position back, what do you notice about the club face? It's now open, isn't it? What I want to do now, look, if I square that club face up from there to there, that handle is twisting. If I put that in my hands now, that handle's in a very different place to where it was before. It's in now more of what we call a beautiful draw shape versus slice, or you could even argue straight shot. All right, so let's have a look at this in action. I move the ball back in my stance. Habit number 2, I square the club face up to target, then I grip it, and then watch what happens to the shot. What we have now, look, is a beautiful draw. A positive number, which basically means now a positive number is my direction's heading out to the right hand side. My face to path has started to close, and I've created this beautiful little draw. If, on the other hand, I'd have moved my ball position too far forward in my stance. And then, and this is, you could do this by the way if you are hooking the golf ball, and then I grip the club, so I put the club there, I line the club up towards my target, then I grip it. Watch what happens now. Watch what happens now. I have a swing direction that is way open, and I start to create open face now. I start to create shapes that are heading left of target. Notice how high that is as well. We'll come back to that in a second when we come to low point. But changing ball position can immediately change the shape of your shot. So start with those first two habits. Move the ball back, twist the club until it's square with the target, then grip it. Let's move on to habit number 3. So before we get into habit number 3, you might be asking, well, Danny, why don't we strike the ball right in the middle of when those swing doors line up or close? Well, with an iron, we want to strike the ball first, then the ground. So we actually strike the ball early before the doors actually close in order to strike a great shot. Yeah? This is super important. It's different for driver. We're going to go into that in habit number 4. So that's what we're trying to do, is get you striking the ball early before this lead arm and club line up at impact. Now, this is basically what this yellow line is here. This is the point at where the club should actually strike the ground relative to where the ball is. Now, 50% of my students, once I put this in place, immediately they're already hitting it loads better. But one of my students recently, Tom, it didn't quite work. It made a big improvement, but he still was getting a little bit of this slice. And the reason being is this. Slicers tend to have, the technical term is too much radial deviation. I like to say low hands at impact, okay? They've got too much kind of what we call set in these wrists here. That gets the heel almost coming in, big slices. All I got with Tom was to get his hands raised at the setup, okay, like just simply up here, because the more you raise the hands, the more likelihood is you're going to come from a inside position and catch the ball earlier on in the arc. You may have also seen a recent video I did with Liam from Golf Mates. I'll put a link up somewhere around here, where I actually got him to imagine when he was swinging, because he used to slice it really badly, toe deep divots coming through. Because when you get toe deep divots, what you're doing, your hands are starting to rise. You're kind of getting the sense that you're swinging through this way. Now, the way to practice this is you take your normal setup position, okay? Move that ball back in the stance, just as we've just done, get your club face lined up. And then what I want you to do is this. You're going to strike the ground in line with this yellow marker here. And all I'm going to do is imagine toe deep divots right there on that yellow marker. Now watch this. Ball position's here. I'm going to line myself up and I'm going to imagine striking the ground in line with that yellow marker with what I feel like is toe deep divots. Now watch this curve. Now if you slice here, this is the shape you should be going for when you're out practicing, okay? Super valuable. Spend some time getting those toe deep divots or high hands and you're gonna see a massive difference, okay? Now before we go into driver, let me just cover those of you who might hook. So if you hook the golf ball, yes, move the ball further forward in your stance fraction, do the exact opposite. But in terms of actively, you can imagine more of a heel deep divot. So notice this. I'm now coming in more with my heel. This is going to shift my path more to the left, okay? That's going to give me much more. Watch the difference here. Watch this motion now. I'm hugely exaggerated, but watch. That, 2 heel deep divots, look at the face, look. Keeps the face massively open. So I super exaggerated that, just for illustration, but look at the difference. Yeah, makes sense. I move the ball position further forward, that gets my swing direction also heading way out to the left. So simple changes in what I'm doing here create different shapes to your shots. So let's now look at why most people slice driver and how you might need to stop it. So before I get into habit number 4, look, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and look, come and subscribe to the channel. It's completely free to do so. I release videos like this every single week to try and help you improve your game. I also leave a free downloader practice guide in the top comment below this video, where you also get a chance to have a free swing assessment from myself. So habit number 4, and this will only really take a few seconds, but it will help you hit driver much straighter. Now, taking the habits we did for the irons, we have to eliminate one of them. One of them is we can't move the ball way back in our stance we drive it, particularly if you slice, you just can't do that. Because you'll hit too down on the golf ball, and look, with not a lot of angle on the driver, you're just gonna hit it too low, you won't get any distance. So the thing we need to do with driver, we tee the ball up, yeah? We also move the ball forward in our stance, so it's directly opposite our lead heel. But what is happening when you do that? You're increasing the likelihood that you're gonna slice it. Why? Because as you move the ball further forward in your stance and you tee it up and maybe just lean back a fraction, you're now likely to catch the ball late on the arc, which we know from what we talked about earlier is more likely to be a slice path, which is why most golfers slice, okay? So if you can get rid of the slice through and ball back, what can you do? Well, let's go into it. So the ball position is opposite our lead heel here. What we're going to do is we are going to take one of the habits from earlier. We're going to raise the handle a little bit if you slice, okay? Just raise it up a little bit here. The next thing I'm going to do is this. When I'm raising it up, I'm going to make sure that my shoulders aren't doing this. When I hold it in my left hand, they're not dipped. Because if they're dipped, and you'll see a recent video I did with Liam Harris from GolfMates, when he did this, he then leaned over with his trail shoulder. I see this a lot, and already look, now we're in the slice pattern already, yeah, which is very normal when the ball's forward in our stance. So simply raise the lead shoulder up in the air, put your trail hand on the back of your leg here, and this draws the shoulders back and it brings the hand a bit more underneath. So what we're doing here is this, we're alleviating every single possibility that you are going to aim left to tag. We don't want to have any of this in there. And a forward ball position is so common. When with balls forward, we tend to go with it too much. So we're alleviating all of these potential habits or problems that get in the way of our swing. Bring it down, bring it in. Now we've got a nice raised handle. Now all I want you to do finally, particularly if you slice, is this. Please don't have the intention to avoid hitting it to the right if you're a right-hander. I want you to start to focus on hitting the ball with maybe a little fade down the middle of the fairway. I know it sounds obvious, but most people, when they're stood up there, they're remembering all the bad shots they've hit and they have an avoidance mentality. The more you're trying to avoid this, the more you'll start to turn over this way to avoid it, and the more everything gets open. Remember, you're right on the borderline with this driver setup. You're more likely to slice it anyway. So try and alleviate all of those factors by getting yourself set up in a position. And once you're there, get ready to just give it a rip. Okay, simple as that. Beautiful, beautiful little draw. So if you hook the golf ball too much, you could just make sure the handle's maybe a little bit lower, test it out, move the ball forward. You might have it too far back and that's getting you too in, too out. Simple things, you know, just make changes to your setup, okay? These are the habits I'd love to stick in your game. Now, if you want to combine these habits with correct body motion, which will really enhance this, you must watch this video right here. It will work with this unbelievably well. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe share it with one of your friends who could do with some help and some simple things that they can work on to help to improve their game. And of course, look, if you're new to the channel, press that little subscribe button down below. It's completely free to do so. And remember, there's a free download practice guide in the description box below, and I'll pin it to the top comment, and you get a chance to get a free lesson from myself. But until next week, have a great golfing week.